everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, here with AJ in Austin, Texas, here with the whole team actually.
Yeah,
and,
almost the whole team.
Almost the whole team, minus Janelle, but she'll be here next week.
Yes.
And so we've got a good show today. This is episode 160, so abroaders.com/160. We are going to run through the second half of the redeeming section, and we've also got some news and updates for you. So today we have a new offer for the Amex Business Platinum. Emirates launching a fifth freedom route. AirAsia contemplating flights to the United States. Some really good United Business Award availability for Europe this summer. A couple of tips for military families, folks that can get a big discount with Southwest. We're also going to be talking about change fees and the travel ban that was just implemented last week. And we've got one reader success story and one reader question to go through and a couple of other random news stories to touch on.
Yeah, man. Well, let's kick it off with earning points. Everyone likes to hear about big new sign-up bonuses, but before everyone gets their hopes up, this is not for everybody. So what we've got here is the Amex Platinum business card. It launches a new sign-up bonus of 75,000 points. Now, you got to do some spending to earn that. You're going to get 50,000 points after your first 10K spent, and then you're going to get the remainder after another 10K spent. So they are making you earn it. But there's a lot of businesses that spend that much money, lots of businesses. So decent opportunity. There are some things to keep in mind, though. I mean, man, what's the annual fee on this card?
So this is $450. You get essentially the same benefits as you see with the Sapphire Reserve card in terms of priority pass and in terms of having global entry credit or pre-check. The nice thing about the Amex card is the Centurion Lounge access if you don't already have one of those. Overall, I think the big thing about this card, we have the Business Gold Rewards card, which earns 3x on airfare or on advertising, which is really valuable. But we actually just saw a 50,000 point upgrade incentive for the gold card. So I think we're going to actually skip it. But I had a really good conversation in the Slack channel with a couple of the Abroaders members talking about that they had seen that offer as well. And that doesn't require any spending. So this is one where if you've never had the Amex Platinum before, you can get this sign-up bonus, which is pretty good. Sometimes it goes up to 100, and it is a lot of spend. But if you don't think you can meet the spend and you already have the Amex Business Gold, check in the Amex offers section to see if you got targeted for that upgrade, because they basically will give you 50,000 points with no spending requirement by just changing card.
Quick reminder, too, Amex points are very valuable. We, I think, talk about Chase a lot more because they have issued more points to, the kind of cards our listeners are getting. I mean, the Reserve was a big deal with the 100K points. The Sapphire Preferred has been a mainstay. The personal cards for Amex haven't been as consistent with big bonuses, so we forget about them. But Amex points are just about as valuable as Chase points. Yep.
Yeah, definitely agree. And this is going to come into our listener question in a little bit as well, because Jason has some Amex points. So a couple of other just travel booking things to cover. Looks like Emirates is launching a fifth freedom flight from Newark to Athens. This one's kind of cool just because you can use Alaska miles on Emirates. We've talked a little bit about that recently with the Virgin America and being able to transfer over. However, Alaska dramatically increased its price for first class. So business class is potentially going to be, the better deal, but it's still really, really expensive. And so, in general, I would say if you want to book an Emirates award, one of the better ways is actually with Mileage Bank, which is Japan Airlines. And the only easy way to get Japan Airlines points is by transferring from Starwood Preferred Guest. But that's definitely a much better deal than trying to transfer Starwood to Alaska. The price is just going to be a lot higher.
So, yeah, Alaska is 2 or 3 or more times higher than Japan.
Yep. So kind of interesting. Could be a cool flight. Always like seeing the Fifth Freedoms, but definitely not the best value in terms of number of points you spend, in particular in premium cabin to go from the US to Europe.
Some interesting aviation news here is we've got some action with AirAsia. So AirAsia has done the preliminary things that they need to do to be able to fly to the United States, a place that they do not fly to. So AirAsia is a discount carrier based out of Southeast Asia, super cheap fares, and they're considering about getting into the US market. And I don't remember exactly the quote, but their CEO said something along the lines of really making prices competitive in the United States. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We've seen some discount carriers from Europe penetrate the U.S. market, and that's going to be interesting with Norwegian and WoW. So it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening with AirAsia. But I mean, if AirAsia is flying, I would imagine them starting to the West Coast potentially. We could see some really cheap fares there because at least within Asia, it's very cheap. So
Yeah. Speaking of Europe, we've got some really good availability in business and economy for fares to Europe from the US. These are flights on mostly on United Metal, but there are some partner carriers as well. In particular, flights to Paris, Dublin, Brussels, and Amsterdam have some of the really good seats. Kind of an interesting targeting there, potentially really going after KLM and Air France with Paris and Amsterdam. But just really good to see better business class availability. And keep in mind, if you have United miles, instead of paying 70,000 points for business class on a partner, you can pay 57.5, which is a pretty awesome deal. It's still not quite the best business class between the US and Europe, but if this fits your travel plans, it's pretty hard to find a good Saver Award seat in the summer. And so I think this is one that if you know for sure you're going to Europe this summer, this is something to take a look at now, because by March, it's probably not going to be this.
Yeah. You don't know off the top of your head, does United have any Polaris servicing Europe?
So they're rolling it out. They've got the soft product for the most part. So they've got the bedding, the new pillows, the new teddy bear they're handing out, all the new food improvements. But I don't think that the seat itself is installed in a lot of the aircraft yet. So we got a little ways to go. All
right, man. So we talk about T-Mobile a lot and how that's enabled us to get off a plane and just be connected to a local cell service and just rock and roll without dinking around SIM cards. So AT&T is doing something that they're claiming to simplify international travel and international roaming plans, but it really doesn't look too much like T-Mobile. They're boasting great value in $10 a day, which, when you think about it, is a better deal than the traditional international roaming, but it's still nowhere near as close to what T-Mobile does.
I think it'll be interesting to see whether this is quality service, high-speed roaming. I mean, the biggest drawback with the T-Mobile to me is that it's generally like 2G, slow speeds, good for text, not good for video or sending pictures or anything like that. But pretty substantial coverage, 100 countries. So if you do have AT&T, it's a little less expensive, but depending on how long you're out of the country, $10 a day can still add up pretty quickly.
So there's an interesting blog post on the Points Guy about military discounts. And I want to say that the author of the post was active military duty, and he talked about, anytime he travels, he asks, hey, do you guys have a military discount? And often, as he put it, there's, really generous perks with boarding and baggage, but JetBlue was the only carrier that actually discounted fares for active military. Now, what he just had happen to him was Southwest discounted his fare, and he found out that Southwest has kind of an odd way of doing it, but they do offer discounts to active military. And as he said it, it's not always a discount. Sometimes the, I want to get away fare is actually cheaper on the website than the military discount. However, in this guy's case, it was huge. He went from, I want to say, $150 per ticket to his $8 per ticket. He called them up on the phone because he was going to change something, and they just randomly asked him, hey, do you happen to be active military? And he said, why, yes, I do. And he's like, what about the other travelers? Are they dependents of you, an active military member? He goes, yeah. And they rung it up, and his trip was $8.50 per person. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that's cool to see, because I don't know, man, like those people are getting kind of dumped on from every which way. The military, all the issues and stuff going on with the VA. So it's cool to see a company step up, like we're seeing in other areas right now. Companies stepping up and taking a bit more responsibility for making the country a better place.
Yeah, and I know we definitely have some military folks
Lots of them,
in the
actually.
Podcast listener group. One other perk, I don't know all the details on this, but I know that some of the high fee cards, in particular the Amex Platinum, waives the annual fee for military members. And so that's feedback I got from somebody by email. It's something I definitely want to check, and you want to check before you apply, because we don't know that for 100%. But at least at some point a few months ago, that was the thing, that they were waiving the big annual fee on those cards for active military folks. So that's definitely worth keeping track of too. Okay, so getting towards the end of the news, I did want to talk for a second about the traveler ban. It looks like a bunch of airlines have stepped up and basically said that, if you had your flight interrupted because of the ban on 7 different countries not being able to come into the United States, that you can change your plans and fly elsewhere or something like
Hmm.
that. But it looks like this just created a massive just mess.
Oh yeah, a huge mess across the board. And then you've got some people speaking up, and there's protests at airports, which I fully support those people, but that creates some more things with
More
travel.
chaos.
You've got the New York Taxi Driving Union boycotting JFK pickups, Uber and Lyft kind of being opportunistic. But this has been a really big deal, and something that I saw was interesting, and I did not fact check this, so I'm not 100% sure, but I read an article about an Australian citizen being part of this and was negatively affected.
Oh man.
Something happened because his parents are from Iran, and so he's a dual citizen. And so he's born in Australia. He's an Aussie and an Iranian by virtue of his parents being Iranian. And I think that's a pretty big thing in Iran where like that gets passed on to the kid. Like I think Iran makes you do that in like some weird way. I've met some Iranian people that have never been to Iran, but they have an Iranian passport because that's like I don't know. But either way, this person was born in Australia, came to the U.S. for space camp. That's what it was. This kid was coming for space camp, and he got turned around. It's just like Jesus, what? So yeah, big mess on travel, and hopefully none of our listeners have been affected by this.
I mean, I think the thing for U.S. people, U.S. permanent residents, if you're traveling back from one of those countries, you definitely want to leave some extra connection time because, at least in the immediate future, getting through passport control is just potentially going to take way, way longer. Another good
Hmm.
reason to get signed up for global entry, especially
Yeah.
if you have one of the cards that waives the fee for that. Okay, so before we get to the course, I wanted to get into one listener question. So Jason emailed us asking about plans for a trip. He's going to be spending some time with his girlfriend in Europe, and they think they've got a pretty good plan for the outbound from the United States. They're going to be doing Etihad points using Brussels Airways for the one-way and business class from New York to Belgium.
So this is real. It's mythical.
It's
I need
real,
proof. Is
so,
this Jason? Jason, you got to send us a picture because I don't believe it, man.
36K is the business class redemption. But his question was actually about the return trip. He was really excited about the idea of flying first class on Lufthansa from Munich to JFK. And so this is for next January 21st or 22nd of 2018. And now he's got a whole bunch of different points, but I thought this was a really good question to answer on the show because there's sort of a tricky issue with Lufthansa first class. Generally speaking, Lufthansa makes business class available sort of as the year goes on, and they make first class available to partners only within 14 days of departure. So this could be kind of a tricky setup. And just a quick recap, we're actually going to get into a little of this today with the redemption stuff, but in this case, the travel from the day that the show airs, the 21st or the 22nd of January, is going to be about 353 or 354 days from departure. So most of the airlines have released their seats there. Lufthansa actually releases or loads their schedule 355 days out. So you're inside that window. But depending on which type of points you want to use here, United doesn't let you book anything until 338 days out. And so the rest of them are closer to 355, 356. So Singapore, ANA, Air Canada, all of those come in at 355 or 6. And then Avianca is 360 and Asiana is 352. Now, Jason brought this up, the Asiana opportunity to book on Lufthansa. I didn't know about that. And their mileage price is really reasonable. It's like 50,000 points for a one-way in first class. And keep in mind, United is 110,000. So I wanted to kind of address two different things. He's got 19,000 SPG points and he's got 33,000 Asiana points. So one way that he could do this is to transfer the SPG over to Asiana. If you wanted to get that 5,000 bonus, which in this case, if it's only 50, he's already got enough. So you maybe just leave the rest, but you could transfer 3,000 Amex to SPG to make 20,000 and then get the 5,000 bonus. But either way, they're going to be stranded in that Asiana account. Yeah. So that's one possibility. He could get one of the tickets using Asiana and only pay 50,000. And then the second one, he's got a bunch of different options. He could use a lot of these different carriers. But what I would say is that the best strategy here is going to be to try and secure business class, which should open up further in advance. And then just be aware that you're going to pay that change fee. But if you really want to fly in the first class experience, then try and upgrade in the last 14 days. And Expert Flyer does have access to Lufthansa. I wouldn't bother, like the subscription's $10 a month. It's free for 5 days, but that's not enough to monitor and actually use their alerts feature. And so the key thing that I would do here is like, say 18 days, 3 weeks out, you want to start your account with Expert Flyer, sign up, pay the $10 for the first month or whatever, and start monitoring those flights so that you get an email alert as soon as the seats are available, because you're not the only person probably that's waiting on those 8 first class seats on that flight, and you only got a couple of days. So good luck. I would love to hear back sometime close to next January.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting to hear about this flight to Europe. I don't believe it, man. So please send a picture or something.
All right. So last story before we get to the course here, I couldn't believe that this actually happened, but this hotel was hacked by some folks that figured out how to shut down the smart locks, and were essentially held at ransom until the owners of the hotel paid up, and they ended up paying a ransom of like 1,500 euros in Bitcoin. Yeah. So they actually gave in, but later in the article, it turns out that this is like the 4th time that this particular hotel.
Did you see the quote on one of the management people talking about how, well, when we do a renovation, we're going to have regular keys as well?
Yeah. Well,
man, that's becoming more common, man. Businesses are a target. If you're vulnerable to ransomware, man, they'll lock your stuff up and make you pay to play with your own toys.
I mean, what do you do though if you're a fully booked hotel and all of a sudden somebody
you got to? I tell you what, I don't know if the hotel negotiated or something, but I think that's a hell of a deal to make that problem go away. You've got a major security breach affecting every single room in your hotel and the people's keys, and you just pay $1,500 to make it go away. You can easily spend $10,000 on some IT guy trying to tinker around and figure stuff out, so they dodged a bullet there. All right, man, in continuation, we started a few weeks ago with the earning point section of our course. Last week we got going on redeeming points, and now we're going to go a little bit further into redeeming points. So we're going to start with booking rules. And so the goal of this part of the course is to explain the rules for booking tickets, because that's where a lot of the heartache comes with trying to use points, is understanding all the rules and also just not being aware of opportunities that you have. So I guess, do we want to just run through some examples of booking rules and then we can take a little bit deeper dive?
Yeah. So the main ones that we talk about in the lesson, we're going to give an abbreviated version here, but stopovers and open jaws are really valuable if you know how to combine them and you know which programs allow you to do them. And then one-way travel can be a nice tool as well for the programs that let you book those at half the price round trip. And then the second part, we talk a little bit about being able to hold award tickets, the fees that might come along, and some of the routing restrictions. So it's easier for you to identify when you might be breaking a rule that's maybe even not written out or explained very well, that's causing the search engine or the website to not be able to find your seat. All right, so let's start off with the basics with stopovers.
Okay, so stopover is pretty much just a free extra destination on a trip. Obviously depends on the program. Not everyone lets you do it, but for those that do, typically you get to just stop and hang out in a city. So let's say you're going to go to Europe. Let's say you're going from New York to ultimately Barcelona, but you also want to check out Paris. So utilizing a stopover, you could go New York to Paris. You could spend a few days there living the Parisian life, walking down the street with your baguette sticking out of the bag, and then you can head to Barcelona and ultimately make your triumphant return to New York. And that would not be priced as 3 flights. That's just 2. You're just going to Europe and you're going back from Europe. The flight would be the same price as going to Barcelona, and if they allow you to do the stopover, then that is your stopover, that is your free stop.
Yep. So the only difference with the open jaw is that instead of in AJ's example where you actually get a flight from Paris to Barcelona, you'd have to connect the dots there. So you fly into Paris and you fly home from Barcelona. But in a lot of cases, that can actually be an advantage because maybe you want to see some of the stuff on the way from Paris to Barcelona. And so flying isn't very helpful because you get to miss all the beautiful countryside or getting to experience Europe on rails or, lots of different cool stuff that you can do. And so the nice thing about open jaws is that with most programs, you can do them either at the point of origin or the destination. So if you want to do an open jaw from the US, you can fly out of New York and let's say fly back into Los Angeles. And so that's really helpful. And the next one is that you can sort of combine these two sometimes. And so it's possible that you actually get 3 destinations. So take AJ's example, New York, this time you go to London, then to Paris. London's your stopover, Paris is your destination, and then you fly home from Barcelona. So now you've got London, Paris, and Barcelona on one trip. Not everybody's got that much time to really be able to appreciate some cities, but at the very least, it can be helpful. The other thing to keep in mind is it's not a stopover if it's less than 24 hours. So it's also possible to get free
Have a
stopovers.
day in a city.
If you're willing to, not travel very with much luggage, and you've got some sort of solution to store your luggage at the airport, then you might be able to get a 23-hour stopover.
I've got an anecdote about that. I tried to do that and I failed. It was I think 2 years ago in Paris. I'm like, I've never been to France. I've never seen Paris. I'm gonna design a nice long layover, and I'm gonna head into the city, and I'm gonna get something to eat and do all those things. And then I was just really tired. And then one of the security people, they were misleading. And long story short, they told me I couldn't leave because I somehow went past. It was a mess. And so I never left the airport and just hung out in the lounge or something for 7 hours. But
God,
yeah,
backfiring. All right, so we got a few other things to cover here. One of them is holding award tickets. And so this is pretty rare, and so we're not going to cover too much. But American Airlines is a good example where they let you hold your award ticket for 5 days. And so it's really helpful if you're doing a combination of American and a different carrier. You want to book the American reservation first with the American miles. That's a hold for 5 days. So instead of paying for it with your card, you just put it on hold, and then you can put together the rest of your ticket. So be aware of those, and also be aware that the free change rule up to 24 hours only applies for tickets booked more than 7 days in advance.
Yeah. Now, people with American, you need enough miles to be able to book your flight to put that on hold. Yeah.
Yes. No, actually, no, you don't.
No.
I think you can, no, because we've definitely had people that had SPG, which is a little dicey because SPG transfers in about 3.5 days. Yeah. But it is possible to put the ticket on hold even if you don't have enough points, and then try and immediately transfer your SPG points in to get the reservation. So something cool with American, there aren't a lot of programs that do that. But having the ability to hold an award ticket, and if not, just use that 24-hour free change, means you got to kind of scramble to put together all the legs of the trip, within a 24-hour period. But it's definitely possible.
Yeah, but at least
if something goes wrong, you can get out.
Yeah, and at least you don't have that part of your trip falling out from underneath you while you're trying to put the finishing touches on it. If you don't put a hold on it, then you find another flight, and then your original flight's gone. So it's good to at least lock up what you can.
All right. So last up, we've got award ticket fees. There's a close-in booking fee that a lot of programs charge, which is usually about $75. And that's for bookings within 21 days of departure, which means I am on my deadline today to get my ticket to Brazil for Carnival.
Hey, potentially there's something good on Delta, maybe, because Delta does not have a closing.
Man, I looked at the availability is horrible.
Really?
It's really bad.
Man, they really have been putting the screws down, because a month ago, man,
AJ got a $5 ticket, right?
Yeah, $5.60, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is what you get for procrastinating.
Yeah. Another fee that they can hit you up with is a phone booking fee. And this one is often avoidable. Because, in our experience, lots of times I'll call just because it's easier. But, if you take a look at the website and you can't book something through the website, and ultimately you can book it through the phone, you can say, hey, I tried to book this on your website and I couldn't. I don't think it's fair. I paid the phone booking fee, because we've had many situations where there was an issue and the website did not allow us to book what we wanted to book, or we talked an agent into booking something that the website wouldn't allow us to book, and
Yeah, so try not to get charged that one. And, it depends on how much you value having to call back, either ask for a supervisor or just eat the fee. But a lot of times it can be waived. Then if you do need to change your ticket, change fees are generally $30 to $200. That can be a big chunk of money. And so, just watch out for that. Try and get everything nailed down within the time frame that you've got.
Yeah, and be in tune with what the rules are, because sometimes there is a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can change the dates. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can change, so there's depends what the program, I guess, is a key takeaway there.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next section, but there is even more in this one as far as different restrictions and different booking rules. So check it out if you want the advanced version. And one more reminder, the course, the coupon for podcast has expired. So if you didn't already get on and get the course for free, you will definitely want to sign up for our email list, because in the next week, we're going to be sending it out to folks who have signed up recently, sending out one more chance. So if you missed the free course with the podcast code, we're going to send something out in the next week or so.
Okay, this section is on transferable points, which are very, very tough to argue against for being the most powerful types of points, because they can take on so many different programs, rules, depending on where you want to go. So the whole idea behind this is to kind of give you the basic understanding of the power of transferable points, and more so a framework, a way to think about transferable points and what they can be, because you're ultimately looking at these transferable points that get to kind of cherry pick the rules and the regulations and the routes and the pricing of different programs, and it's just a matter of mixing and matching.
Absolutely. All right. So the main transferable currencies are Chase Ultimate Rewards, Amex Membership Rewards, Citi Thank You Rewards, and Starwood Preferred Guest. Now, Starwood is one that we're a little bit less certain of because they were recently overtaken by Marriott. And so, at least for the rest of this year, Marriott is saying that the Starwood program is sort of going to remain intact. So, there's not going to be a ton of major changes, but those might not be transferable points more than a year from now. So if you have them, those might be ones to consider using sooner rather than later. But the other three have been around for a long time, and it looks like they're doing extremely well. So I don't see any likelihood of transferable currencies going anywhere soon. Okay, so I want to take Chase Ultimate Rewards as a quick example just to kind of explain what AJ meant when he said that the transferable currencies can take on all these different rules and different types of pricing. So Chase has 7 airline partners: British Airways, Air France, Korean, Singapore, United, Virgin Atlantic, and Southwest. And so those are 7 different programs, and your Chase points can instantly, for most of them, or within a few days for a couple, become that currency, which means they take on those rules. So that would be like the stopover rules, the change fee rules, the booking rules, and the pricing. All of those things, as soon as you move your Chase points to United, they take on United's rules. But where it gets super interesting is that each of those programs has their own airline partners. So British Airways has 21, Air France has 33, Singapore has 35, United has 40. So each of these has just exponentially more options in terms of which types of aircraft or which airlines you want to fly with. And so I think that is kind of the key thing. And we put together some visuals to just sort of explain how these relationships work. But the key thing is that you want to start sort of working backwards and figure out where you want to go, which airlines serve those destinations, and then take a look at the transferable program points that you have and see which frequent flyer programs are an advantage to be able to book those tickets. And it can take a little bit of time if you are using transferable points and you're relatively new to this. Check in with us, shoot us an email, or send in a booking request, and we'll take a look and try and point you in the right direction.
Okay, some general rules to keep in mind with transferable points is they're irreversible. It's a ship in the bottle situation. It goes in, but it can't come out. So be very conscious of that. And that's another thing we preach is, if you can, take a look at availability before you go ahead and commit and transfer your points, because often there's multiple programs you could transfer to. So you really want to see what works best for you before you make those moves. And then finally, typically you can only transfer points to a frequent flyer program in your name or the name of your spouse. That's like a pretty good rule of thumb. There are some exceptions.
The exception generally is business cards. If somebody else is a card holder, you can transfer points to their accounts too. But you just want to be aware of that. One of the rules that your points are going to take on when you transfer them out is expiration. And the good thing is that transferable points from Citi, Amex, and Chase don't expire as long as you have your credit card account open. So they're sort of protected from all of the expiration rules of the programs that they might transfer to while they remain those flexible transferable points. The one problem with this is that with Amex and Chase, basically all your points are safe as long as you have one card that earns that type of points. You've got those points, they're not going to expire. With Citibank, if you close the card that earned those points, so if I have a Prestige and a Thank You Preferred, Prestige has a really high fee and I cancel the card to avoid that fee at the end of the year, the points from that particular card are going to expire after 60 days.
Yeah, clock ticks.
So you really need to be careful and make sure that you're prepared to use them if you're going to cancel a Citi card. But Amex and Chase just having one open. Now, when you transfer the points out, again, they're going to take on the rules of the program you transfer them to. So you want to be aware, generally, just as a rule, you just want to transfer when you're ready to book. And then you don't have to worry about that situation.
Another thing we should touch on is how transfers work. So to start it off, typically transfers are 1-to-1, meaning if I have one Chase point and I transfer to United, I'll get one United point. Right. That is kind of the rule, but there are exceptions to the rule, and you want to be conscious of that. If something looks too good to be true, maybe it's a 2-to-1 situation where it takes 2 miles to actually get one in your destination currency. And another thing is, some programs are set up for instant transfer. So the minute you click go from, let's say, inside of Chase to send it to United, it's virtually instant. However, there are some programs like Singapore
Yep.
I believe that
Singapore takes about 48 hours. That's one where, so if you're sitting on, you've got the award seat that you want to book, it can be hard because you could transfer the points, like AJ said, it's only one-way street there. So you can't get the points back if it doesn't work out. You're stuck with Singapore points, and somebody else could book that ticket before you get there. So that's one thing to just be aware of. The other thing with the instant transfers is just be aware that even if it's instant, usually you have to log out of your account and back in. So if you're sitting there like ready to click buy on that ticket, you're possibly not going to see the points post, and you'll actually have to log out of your account and log back in to see
One thing we really should point out too is linking accounts, because that can be an issue sometimes. You're jacked up and you're ready and you want to transfer your points, and then, oh shit, my Amex and my Delta accounts are not linked up, and oh, the website's not that user friendly, and oh, there's no one to call, and that happened to me long ago, and it was pretty overwhelming. So luckily, I'm pretty sure most of my accounts that should be linked are linked, but you want to make sure that if you got Amex points or Chase or Citi, map out all the potential transfer partners and just spend 20 minutes linking them up. And then when you're ready and excited to book travel, you don't have, that become some egg on your face.
Yeah, because it can take time. That's
bragging to your friends and family about how you're about to save all this money on the flight, and then they ask you what happened, and well, I couldn't transfer my point. Then I told you points were a waste of time.
Jeff, you've been wasting your time. Podcast. Yeah. All right, so I think we've covered most of the important sets of rules here. I think the big thing with the transferable points in general is that when possible, you want to save them for, if you've got a set of points in United already and you've got Chase points, use the United points first because they're less flexible. The Chase points can always become United. So they are some of the most valuable types of points, and you want to try and save them for when you need them the most. The other thing to be aware of is occasionally there are a small transfer fee. Amex does this with Delta, JetBlue, and Virgin America. So they charge an excise tax, which for moving 100,000 points would cost $60. So it's not nothing, but it basically can just wrap it into the taxes and fees that you're going to pay for the award ticket. Still a pretty good deal. Currently, Citi and Chase do not have that excise tax that they levy. And for Amex, it's just US-based airlines. So if you transfer Amex to Air France, if you transfer to Singapore or to British Airways, you're not going to see that. It's only with Delta, JetBlue, and Virgin. All right, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. We have a whole bunch more news and updates and a little bit more redeeming wisdom coming your way next week. See you next week.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to